pretty powerful topic that I want to explore this morning. I'm going to start with a quote by Ernest Holmes because it's kind of perfect for where I'm going. The spark which burns at the center of our own soul is caught from the living and eternal flame of spirit. Our charge then is to recognize, nurture, and express this divine spark of wholeness. We kindle this flame by living our divine center, recognizing it in others, working for it in our community and in the world, and looking to the great way showers to inspire and guide us on our path. In this, the universe knows us as whole. And I don't know if I'm the only one here that has problems sometimes embracing or even finding my wholeness. But I think it's pretty common, at least for fleeting moments, even in the most conscious and whole, confident, empowered people. So to perceive our world as whole and to enrich an atmosphere of a shared life, we have to cultivate a sense of our own wholeness, the wholeness that's inside of each of us. And it helps to release our ideas and our concepts and our feelings of separation from each other, from source, and from the greater whole that we all are. Because really, there's just one of us here. We're all connected in ways that I discover more every day of my life. The similarities, the common paths, the common challenges that we all face at different times in our life. It's pretty much the same journey. It just looks different to each of us. So another great teacher, the founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, wrote, "God does not love anybody or anything. God is the love in everybody and everything." That's pretty powerful. I'm going to read that again. God does not love anybody or anything. God is the love in everybody and everything. Think about that. So love is this spark, this divine spark that's in all of us. And the idea that we all carry this in our soul, and that this spark emanates from a higher power, from an energy greater than our little individual forms and our little earth suits here. So Ernest Holmes teaches us that we kindle this flame by living our own divine center, recognizing it in others, working for it in our community, that's a really important one, and in the world, and looking to the great way shores. So I always think of people like Martin Luther King, the Dalai Lama, even the political activists like Nelson Mandela, Cesar Chavez. We're in the season for peace and nonviolence right now, and all of these great way showers, these giants whose shoulders we stand upon, are honored this time of year. So we have to be, probably the most important component of all of this is we must be clear about our own inherent wholeness, about our identity. And we need to work to heal these false notions of separateness, of separation, just period, of that we aren't connected, that what one does doesn't affect what the rest of the world, because everything any of us does affects everything. And I'll give some examples of that later. I mean, I've always had this kind of inherent knowing that there's really only one of us here, that we're all like little pieces of this greater light. We're little sparks, little lights. And so the idea that if I'm connected to everyone and I'm willing to work on the broken parts of myself, to heal these broken parts of myself, that my healing, because there's only one of us here, ripples out. And as I heal, I help to heal everyone around me. That is a concept that's probably kept me in the music business for almost 50 years now. Coming up in April, it'll be 5 decades. Because I recognized that the music that I created to heal the broken parts in me, or my perceived broken parts, I would play things, people would come up to me and say, oh, that really resonated with me, that was so meaningful, and that helped a hurt place not hurt so much. And the recognition for me that what I expressed musically in my own healing was helpful to other people was a huge motivator to keep me in this business. So when Thurman says the world needs people who have come alive because they followed their calling, they embraced whatever their unique gift was, and then they let this knowing that they were on their correct path guide them. So no matter how frustrating the music business has been for me at times, if my messages touch one person, if my music turns one life around, changes one mind from anger or hatred to love and acceptance, then I'm doing good work. So Richard Bach says, dwell in the world which you have created. What you hold in your heart shall be true, and what you most admire, that you shall become. So this is a statement of how powerful our minds are. What we picture, we manifest. I mean, Susan's share this morning was perfect. She didn't ask for a plant for herself. She asked for a plant for the church, and how it was presented by her neighbor was, maybe your church could use this. I mean, sometimes it's such a smack in the face, like, whoa, somebody's listening and acting on what we're asking for. So when we consider the spiritual idea that there's only one of us here, that we're parts of one whole, that what we each do helps heal the bigger picture, it can be a real motivator. So John Mark Green says, this is another slide, and I want to thank my husband for putting these together, as my hubby Alan. Sometimes alone with your thoughts can be is a crowded place to be. Anybody else have a committee? I am my best friend, and I call it the committee. One of my other walking buddies calls it the board. The board's been having a meeting all morning. She goes, I wish they would just take a recess. So it's so true. They just really need to take a break and let me sort things out. Let me breathe. Let me process what's going on. Let me get comfortable with the am that I am, and not keep trying to fix it all. I mean, I think in most spiritual paths, the committee is referred to as the ego. Whatever it is, it can kind of wake us up to things that we need to think about, but then it needs to take a break and let us do the work. So as I sing in my song, I embrace my oneness, my wholeness, and that includes our darkness and our light. When we embrace our spark, our light, we're embracing the sparks of everybody, the little interconnected pieces of this greater whole that we all are. Charles Fillmore said that spiritual realization means at-one-ment, atonement, at-one-ment, completion, perfection, wholeness, repose, resting in God. At-one-ment with God brings a lasting joy that cannot be taken away. I love it when people say relaxing into the arms of grace, or really leaning into God. I mean, I've had some crazy stuff going on in my life. And sometimes, and I'm pretty connected. I came in kind of understanding that I'm just a little piece of something greater. And even I forget sometimes to give stuff over. I think every 12-step program talks about giving it over to God. We don't have to be in a program to do that, to accept that there's something greater of us that's got this, that's got our backs. I host a women's circle monthly, and I have a really diverse group of women. And one woman shared about a month ago something that kind of came up in her life, because we were kind of talking about our personal activism and how we can show up as higher versions of ourselves. And she shared that shortly after 9/11, she was speaking with an Asian friend of hers who lived in Berkeley. And she had hateful things said to her, and she had rocks thrown through her shop window, her business. This is an Asian person. This is in Berkeley, of all places. Berkeley's pretty diverse. Yeah. And so she it really shook her. And she's not the kind of person that goes out and demonstrates. She doesn't have a lot of cash to be donating to causes, but she just really felt compelled to do something. It just to her core, she felt so badly for her friend, and she particularly was disturbed by the amount of vitriol that was being leveled at the Muslim community. So she sat in the silence and she asked for guidance. And what she was guided to do was to write a letter. So what she did is she researched all of the local Muslim communities, and she composed a letter saying that she wanted to extend an olive branch of love and acceptance, that she wanted to give love and understanding to the Muslim community, and to let them know that she was in solidarity with them during these very trying times. She signed it as a Jew, her husband as a Quaker, and her daughter as a Buddhist. And she sent them. And then she did what is the hardest thing for me, is she had no expectation of a response, and she just released it and she let it go. Several months later, she got an email invitation to a Muslim cultural event in the area. The imam who spoke at the event, in part of his talk, mentioned a letter that he had received that had changed his life. He read an excerpt from the letter, and he said the reason it had changed his life was because it gave him hope. One little teeny act of kindness. She approached him after the end of his presentation and acknowledged that it was her family that had sent the letter, and they fell into each other's arms crying. Such a simple act, and such a powerful. Think of the lives that he changed, and think of that simple act, the idea of something so little that could be so life-changing. I'm sure sharing that story inspired other people to look in their hearts and find what small thing they might do. Because so many of us were having a challenge of really leaning into our wholeness, really accepting our wholeness. And sometimes it's really difficult to see the goodness that we all carry. And sometimes it's hard to see the goodness in other people because they're acting out from a dark place. I always give the example of when I was taking care of my mother who had Alzheimer's, and I could get so glum and so frustrated and so beaten up. She was a really difficult case, and I can remember seeing somebody giving a checker or a waitress a bad time and instantly kind of feeling judgmental toward the person who was being a jerk. The more I took care of my mother, the more I grew through that experience, the more I went to grace and would cut the person acting out a little bit of grace, maybe say a prayer, always say a prayer. Because who knows, maybe their spouse is dying, maybe they have a scary personal health diagnosis. We never know what someone else is going through. So maybe we can remember that we're a part of that other person. And their journey might not look like ours, but we all have darkness, we all have challenges. It's somewhat mind-bending to think that if there wasn't light, we couldn't see a shadow on the ground. So we need both. We couldn't recognize light. If it didn't get dark at night, it would all be the same all the time. When the sun came up, the sun would just always be up. So sometimes without recognizing the darkness in ourselves, we can't heal it. We can't bring the light into it. We can't ask for the help from other people to help shine light on our dark places. And sometimes we really need help from other people. I mean, I came in and chose my path was chosen, and I was thrown into it to be an artist and to use my gifts to try to co-create a world that works for everyone, a world that is open-hearted and loving and open at the top and accepting. So when I see the direction it appears that we're headed, it's extremely hard for me to get to my light. And when I see people acting out in darkness, sometimes it takes a little bit of work to find the light in these people. So Howard Thurman's advice about paying attention to what makes us come alive and following that guidance has carried me most of my life. It's so powerful. I mean, how many of us have started down paths that were not the right one? And how many of us have stayed on it for years before everything blew up and we finally went, this is not working, there must be a better way. And how many of us have had really successful paths that ended? Paths and relationships that we grew as much as we could in that relationship and then we had to let it go. But it doesn't mean that the relationship was a failure. It just means that we grew to the end of our growth in that interaction. The spiritual truth of wholeness is the foundation of our world and its residents. As citizens of this holy place, as midwives, we are charged with holding the world in the light of peace, prosperity, perfect right action, and wholeness. Once again, wholeness. We share this love intelligence with the collective consciousness of humankind, and simply, we do good work in the world. Remember a guy named Jesus that used to say, go forward and do good work in the world? That's what the Christ was talking about. And she said that a practice that she uses is in any situation that comes up, especially the ones that are getting a little uncomfortable or negative, she takes a second and she asks, what would love do here? What would love do here? And then she listens. And sometimes, I've been doing this practice since I heard it because it made so much sense to me. If we can even for a minute just ask that, if nothing else, we are motivated to hold space. That something called love might enter in and change things. When I do this, I allow myself to be so much more tuned into the guidance that's always, always available to me. So my inability to see in my own light at times, the self-doubt can absolutely be completely paralyzing. And I can tell by your faces that I'm not the only one that we just get stuck. We get so overwhelmed with the task of showing up as the highest that we can be. And it's okay sometimes not to. It's okay to ask somebody to help carry us. It's okay to study the greatest teachers, the Christs and the Gandhis and the Dalai Lamas, because that's why they were here, to teach us a better, more evolved way to do our lives. Here's another slide. We see the world piece by piece, as the sun, the moon, the animal, the tree. But the whole of which these are the shining parts is the soul. From within or from without, from within or from behind, a light shines through us upon things and makes us aware that we are nothing, but the light is all. These little human forms are just the little forms that the light is contained in. But it doesn't have to stay in this little form because it's connected to everybody else's light, everybody else's form. We're all interconnected like a big spider web. What one does affects everyone else. So I invite you to shine, to reflect, to embrace all that you encounter. And I want to remind us that we all have our dark days, we all have our struggles, and kindness, compassion goes so much further than we realize sometimes. We all have stuff that we're dealing with. So maybe as we go out in the world, we can ask, what would love do here? In all of our relationships. And as we shine, see shadows converging.